Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, a place to find connection and a sense of belonging, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we talk about sensitivity and the richness that it adds, the strengths we have because of our sensitivity, and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there, to the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers. Today's bonus episode, I'm a little bit reluctant to record this. I'm just feeling nervous. I'm probably going to be messy and imperfect, but I seem to be living that right now. I want to talk about what do we do when we have strong feelings, big feelings, fearful feelings. How do we navigate that when they either keep coming back or they last longer than we want? And some of the shame that can be involved with having intense feelings or working through issues of loss, abandonment, having mood states that don't really work for us. Again, my misfortune is your fortune because I want to talk about some of the things that I've been struggling with. And I have to say that because I have a couple of really close relationships with some other therapists, as I talk about this with other therapists, they experience either similar things or along the same lines. Maybe our issues are a little bit different. And that is giving me comfort and security in talking about this because I think the shame that comes up for me is I'm a therapist and a coach. I shouldn't be experiencing this. I should have better ways of coping. What I'm experiencing shouldn't last as long. It shouldn't be as intense. And as Jen Perry talks about, if our goal is to not feel things or to be able to navigate through life with ease, those are dead guy goals. And part of being a highly sensitive person means that we do feel things very deeply. We process at a deep level. And I think that that really can contribute to having feelings that may look like depression, having more anxiety, having some attachment issues. When I talk about the traits of being a highly sensitive person, I'm not a researcher. I'm not an expert on the trait. I share with you what I can. I'm an expert on me and what I experience, and I'm a wounded HSP. And so I want to own that. And the other thing is that I have been giving some incorrect information, and I've said it on a number of podcasts. And again, this is about just owning my imperfection. The correct statement is the highly sensitive person has more active mirror neurons. We don't have more mirror neurons. And for some reason, at some point, I started saying we have more mirror neurons. I want to be known as an expert in the field, and I'm going to make mistakes and I'm imperfect. Again, this is how I practice, by sharing my imperfection, my vulnerability. Doesn't mean I don't know my stuff. Doesn't mean that I don't have strengths. It means I'm human, and I struggle with things that are very human. And that's really my intention for this podcast, is to really talk about some of the things that create a lot of shame for us. And especially as therapists, I see, and I'm not saying for everybody, but I see a lot of judgment in some of the groups that I'm in for therapists where we can be incredibly judgy, and we need to have a place where it's safe, where we can talk about the things that we struggle with. So one of the things that I want to talk to you about with wounding is I can be going through something and I can either be in it. Life is terrible. I feel terrible. I can't trust anybody. Things aren't working out. That's coming from a place of wounding. It's coming from that wounded part. Or I can talk about my experience. I'm really struggling right now. My thinking is not as positive as I would like it to be. I feel like I'm going to a darker side. It's taking a lot more energy for me to do the things on a daily basis that I know really work for me. That's a place of having wounding and talking about it. And I really want to make this very clear distinction. And I know that there's somebody out there that's going to hear this as whatever they're doing isn't okay and they're not doing it right. And that is not my intention. But I think that it's so easy when we get into these places where we're feeling more vulnerable, our feeling states are higher, we're having shame, we're having abandonment, attachment issues, friendship issues, loss, frustration, disappointment, any of those things, that we tend to go to this place where we have a hard time holding on to the fact that we can be having these intense feelings and we can be managing. And we may not be managing as well as we would like, but we can hold both of those at the same time, and being open to the fact that just because my feeling state is trying to tell me that I don't matter, or this is never going to go away, or this is too hard, or I can't get through it, that we take that thought and we know that it's just a gremlin, a thought, and that that's not really the truth that's going on. And I think that when we get so over-identified with that feeling or the thought, and we act from that, that we get really stuck. And so just having the willingness to be able to say, I don't like what's going on. It feels like it's taking over. I don't know where the part of me that has hope is. That creates that sense of separation. And that is coming from a place of looking at what's going on. I feel like I'm not being very clear. So let me talk a little bit more specifically about some of the things that are going on. The easier thing to start with is, if you're listening to this, I would say in real time. I don't know if there's a better term. If you're listening to this when the episode comes out, which is going to be, I think, the first Tuesday in March of 2020, this Saturday, March 7th, I do a monthly meetup in San Diego at Morley Field, first Saturday of the month. And I recently hit a big milestone of 100,000 downloads. So thank you very much to everybody that's listened, that's shared the podcast with other people. I really, really appreciate it. I struggle with celebrating. It's just something that's really hard. And part of what I got in touch with is how difficult it is for me to ask for what I want. It feels like it opens up this Pandora's box that's been locked away. And this Pandora's box, I think the dog may start barking in a minute. Buster's getting ready to walk by, and I didn't close the door and I didn't take off her collar. So just giving you a heads up. This Pandora's box is about frustration, sadness, anger, disappointment, all the times that I wanted people to show up for me and they didn't show up for me in the way that I wanted them to. That's not really going on today, but I think for many of us, those old wounds and injuries, we don't want to do anything that may start. And there she goes. We don't want to do anything that may trigger opening that box with all of those feelings. And I realized that's what was going on with me not celebrating. What if people don't come? What if I get disappointed? What if it means that people don't care about me? Because I had the meetup scheduled, I just decided to combine the two. And although I've been posting on social media, I've not personally asked the people that are close to me to come. Again, that fear of if I ask and they can't come, I anticipate it triggering a sense of anger. Well, I've shown up for you. I go to your things. I support you. How come you can't show up for me? And what I did is I asked the people that are important to me if they can come, and trust that I can manage the feelings of frustration or disappointment or anger that come up. The truth is, we feel things so deeply. I have a tremendous capacity for the uncomfortable feelings, and I have a tremendous capacity for the feelings that we tend to enjoy more than the other feelings. I can handle it. I can manage it. And just by naming it is allowing room for that to come in. And my intention in talking about this is, my guess is that there are things that you would like in your life that you don't ask people for support, for help, to join you because of that feeling of what if somebody says no, and it triggers this like rage inside of us from when we were younger. It's not even going on today. That the reality is I can handle a no. I can handle being disappointed. I can handle being frustrated. It happens frequently. But when we don't ask for what we want because we're afraid that we're going to open that box of all this old stuff, our lives become very small. Being vulnerable, being courageous, and risking is one of the gifts that we really have as highly sensitive people because of our depth of processing, our depth of feeling, for understanding. We have the opportunity to live these really incredibly rich and full lives with amazing connections. And we need to recognize that those connections go both ways. Like these last couple of weeks where I've really been struggling with feelings of frustration, and it just feels like my mood isn't right. I really don't like using the word depression. And I feel like I've talked about, I was diagnosed with depression. I'm not on meds, and I've changed how I eat, and I take supplements, and I do things that help me manage. I have this thing of like, well, maybe I'm having that again. And I'm not going to judge it. If you want to judge it, go ahead and judge it. What I can tell you is that I've consistently reached out to the few people that I'm really close with to talk about what goes on with me, the part of me that wants to hide, shuffle away, wait until I feel better to come back. I haven't been doing that. I've really been talking about this with other people. And like I said, what I'm finding is that it really resonates for the people that I'm talking with, that they either have something similar or the same thing, that there's space for me to show up and have all of my feelings. And because of that, I'm still continuing to show up in my life on a daily basis. This week is a perfect example. I had 2 of the HSP online groups yesterday, and it was a really hard day for me emotionally. I really didn't want to go to group. I didn't want to lead group. And I made a choice to share with the people in the group what was going on. My gremlins were saying, how can you be a group facilitator and just be struggling with so much stuff? And you were struggling last week. So I shared what was going on, and then I asked for feedback from the group and shared what my gremlins were saying. And the feedback that I got was, it's really reassuring for people to know that I struggle too, and I'm really modeling how I can struggle and still show up and do what I need to do. And I think what happens is we think we're going to have big feelings, and then we can't function, and we have to go to bed for a couple of days. And what I know has gotten me through hard times is to continue to suit up and show up and do the things that I know work for me. So for me, that means taking a shower in the morning, taking the dog for a walk. And I've actually decided that I want to get out at least twice a day to take her for a walk because it makes me feel good. I like getting out. I like moving. I've been really blessed. And I talked about this about 1.5 years ago of how I just didn't have support. I didn't have a lot of local friends. I've really been working on establishing a core group of people that, man, show up for me in such an amazing way. And I think this is where, when we have 1, 2, 3 people, if we're lucky, who really get us as highly sensitive people that can embrace where we're at, that sense of mirroring and validation and having somebody just hold space for us is so incredibly powerful. And I see this in the online HSP courses, that people are having this experience of being with other HSPs. And what we talk about is, this is a time when you don't have to try and figure out what other people need. You don't have to hide your feelings. You don't have to try and be like a non-HSP, that however you show up is okay. There's no way you can screw it up. And people really have this ability to talk about what's going on in a really honest, vulnerable way and have this sense of understanding and connection. And if you haven't had that, we already have this stuff around how I show up in the world isn't okay. And so to be able to consistently have mirroring back, whether it's with a therapist or a coach or a partner or a best friend or another HSP or someone who just gets you, I think this is why many of us have amazing connections with animals. We get that unconditional love, and it's not really someone who can verbally mirror back to us that they get what we're going through. I think that is such a healing part of what goes on for us, because when I'm having big feelings, I want to understand what's going on. I want to talk about it. And I think every single listener has had the experience of sharing what's going on with somebody and they get shamed for it. I can't deal with you. You're too depressed. Why are you so analytical? Why can't you just get over this? And so I think there's this real vulnerability when we're in the middle of something, that if we continue to share with the people we share with, that we're going to get that as well. And it may happen. Or somebody just doesn't have the ability to be present for us. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's about us, but I think these are conversations that are really, really important to have, because it's going to create freedom in our lives for us. I think being seen and heard, especially when we're having feelings that we may not feel okay with, we may have been told are not okay. There is so much power in somebody just being present for us. And I can tell you, I have a couple of people that I can show up and they just embrace exactly where I'm at, and I don't have that. You know, how many of us have heard like, have you thought about getting therapy for that? Are you talking to your therapist about that? Are you on medication? I'm kind of concerned. When I was doing a 12-step program, I had a sponsor who kept wanting me to get on medication because I was having big feelings about stuff. For me, if you need medication, that's fine. I'm not taking a stand on medication. She did not understand how I was wired, how I processed. I was okay with what was going on, but if I shared something intense with her, she got really uncomfortable and she kept pushing me to get medication. Needless to say, we didn't work together for a super long time, but we get these messages all the time that imply that how we're showing up in the world is not okay and that we're broken or we need fixing. And in this stuff that's been going on, I was using some tapping on it, and I was having this belief like, I'm broken, I need to be fixed. How come I'm not over it? How come this stuff isn't going away? I've been handling it really well. Then I was handling it not quite as well. And then I was handling it, but not as well as I was, which created judgment. So finding ways to have radical self-compassion, to lean into the resistance that goes on for me, to lean into the fear, and to see that for me, so much of what's going on right now is really about overwhelm. And I'm really trying to figure out where that overwhelm is coming from. I'm doing a couple of big projects right now. I'm learning information. It's bringing up a lot about what I don't know and reevaluating kind of where I want to be in 5 years and 10 years. And I have a feeling that's part of it. And then I do compensatory behaviors to deal with the overwhelm, like being on my phone. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So really having to reach for radical self-compassion. And it's so easy when the feelings get intense to go into a story about how I'm not managing. And this is where the power of the and comes from. Yes, I'm having deep feelings. Yes, things are feeling like a struggle. I'll do a group. I'll meet with a client. I'll take the dog for a walk. I get some relief, and then this stuff is back on, and I feel pissed. And I'm continuing to show up and do the things that I need to. Am I doing them perfectly? No, it's pretty darn imperfect right now. And the fact that I'm still doing the things that I'm doing has to be good enough. It reminds me of, how many of you at a time in your life, and I hate to use a body image issue, but you hated your body. You felt like you were overweight. If you could just lose some weight, you'd be happy. And now so many years later, you look back on that picture and you think, oh man, I had it so good back then. If I only knew, I'd be happy to be that weight again. Or if we're aging and our bodies are changing, or our hair was thicker, or any of those things. And in the moment, we didn't appreciate it because we felt like if we could just be in another space, things would be better. And I think that's part of the pain that I'm experiencing now, is it's really not about so much of what's going on. It's just about this mood state that I'm in, and how can I find ways to work with it and really embrace what is going well, and to appreciate that this is what I have for today and I can do the best with it. And having that fear of, I may jump into a bag of something that really doesn't work for me. And if I do, can I have compassion for myself? I was feeling that I kind of wanted to, quote, go dark for a couple of days, meaning just kind of pull back and maybe get lost in food or electronics. And I took the dog for a walk this morning, and a friend of mine sent me a polo. I wasn't going to listen to it because I just feel like I'm tired of being in my own stuff. I'm tired about talking about my stuff. And I went ahead and listened to the polo, and this person was struggling with something and having some shame around something. And I felt so incredibly connected and relieved. I'm not the only person that's struggling and suffering. Somebody else is going through something. And I had so much love and compassion for this person and felt so connected. And it was such a reminder that we all have struggles. I don't care who we are. I don't care if we're therapists. I don't care if we're trained in all the latest things. As Jen Perry talks about, the dead guy goals. If we want to have peace and not suffer and not struggle, those are dead guy goals. And if we're going to be alive, we're going to have feels. Things are going to work. Things are not going to work. We're going to have periods where things are more challenging and more difficult and more taxing, and we get a little bit of reprieve. Sometimes we have longer periods of bliss, but being alive is messy. It's imperfect. We're human. We're going to make mistakes, and finding ways to really show up and be present for ourselves, to have community of people that we can talk about what's going on, where we can be really seen and heard and validated, and hopefully have people that also share their struggles, so that it reminds us that this is just part of being alive and having that sense of compassion. My question to you is, what are the feelings that you struggle with? Are there times when you hide out or pull back? Do you have people that you can talk to when you struggle that don't try and fix you and don't get in there and make you feel like there's something wrong with you? I really think, as HSPs, and Dr. Elaine Aron says, we need to have other HSPs in our lives. If you're not a member of the closed Facebook group, Unapologetically Sensitive, I think it's a great supportive community. There are a couple questions that you need to answer if you are interested in joining. I try and create some engagement there. If you're thinking about joining the online HSP course, it's really a great way to get validation that how we show up in the world is really okay. We talk about boundaries and perfectionism and authenticity and vulnerability and self-compassion and mindfulness. And it really puts you in with other people. So you really get this experience that I'm not the only one. and the ways that we feel like we show up in the world are not okay, and you get a reality check from other people and other people are identifying and understanding, I think that's where a lot of our healing comes from. You can find a therapist or a coach to work with if this stuff resonates with you and you're not into doing groups. I work with people online from the comfort of your own home. If you're in San Diego, I would love to have you come to the meetup. Please come and help celebrate with me. There are lots of places and ways that we can get support. And it means this is where that, even if we have wounding, being open to the fact that there is support out for us. We can experience the world in a new way. Just because we've had bad experiences in the past doesn't mean that the whole world is a place where we can't trust. It means being willing to suspend judgment and be open to maybe there is some safety. Maybe there is some security. Maybe I can be seen and heard. Maybe I can thrive. So we can have that conflict and that pain, but it's about being open to acknowledging that maybe there is a different experience than what I've experienced, and I kind of want to see what that's about. So what is it that you're wanting in your life? What are you afraid to ask for? Where do you want more support? Where do you want your life to be bigger? What are you afraid is going to happen? The reality is we've probably all experienced so many hurts and disappointments that the fear of, well, if I want this or put it out there and I don't get it, my feelings are going to be overwhelming. They may be. My guess is that we've probably already experienced and felt so much pain and hurt and disappointment that we probably have the capacity to deal with it. And it opens up the possibilities for so much more connection and growth and grace, because we often want to have meaning and connection in our lives and we don't. We live small because of those fears. So if you're needing support, find a therapist, reach out to me, consider the online HSP courses. I just think that it is possible to have living, walking, breathing proof of I can be struggling and I can show up and record a podcast and talk about it. I can reach out and get support. I can still manage my life. Is it the feeling state that I'd like to have for the rest of my life? No. Can I deal with it for today? Well, for right now, I'm going to deal with it and I'll make a choice in the next hour about what I want to do around it. We don't have to do it perfectly. We can do it messily, imperfectly. If you're interested in attending the local meetup in San Diego on March 7th from 11 to 1, you can go to the show notes or go to meetup.com, look for the highly sensitive person, HSP, and potluck. I will put the link in the show notes at unapologeticallysensitive.com. Just go to the website, click on the podcast page, find this episode, click on it, and the link will be in the show notes. If you're interested in the online HSP groups, again, go to the same website, unapologeticallysensitive.com, click on the HSP group page. I'm going to be making some changes to the website coming up, but it's on my to-do list. I got a lot of stuff to do. What is it that you want in your life? What's keeping you from creating it? Do you need to get support, or are there steps that you can take? Thank you so much to each and every one of you for all the support you've given me, for being a listener, for hitting this amazing milestone. If you're local, if you're close enough and can make the meetup, I would love to see you. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.